Yeah. I'm here to change the game up. I'm here to shuffle up the deck.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Running Through podcast. My name is Justin Horniker, and you're at the hub of all things quarantined, running, staying in my apartment, not going anywhere, not going stir crazy, just, having a grand old time, not leaving the square block radius except for my one run a day. We're hanging in there, guys. We're hanging in there. I have a good interview with Andie Cozzarelli today that I'm pretty excited about because I think Andie is someone who I have a lot in common with in terms of like our story through college and through post-collegiate running. Obviously, she has more talent than I do, but I think her story kind of goes with a lot of themes that we talk about on the podcast. So I think you guys are going to be able to take a lot away from it and maybe see some common ground. Andie also has a great personality for talking about it. You can follow her on Instagram at Run for a Cause, on Twitter at Run for a Cause, and I'll link all that down in the show notes. But before we get to the interview, I want to kind of highlight and shout out some things before we get into it, because I'm feeling grateful today. First off, feeling grateful, feeling worried, I just want to acknowledge some people. Obviously, in this whole crisis, I think we need to have a newfound respect for all the frontline workers. And I'm sure that you probably have some people in your family that are on it. My aunts are nurses. They've been working through this. One of my aunts actually an emergency room nurse, and she's been working a lot, not a lot more than she usually does. And just, it gives you a respect that I'm in this privileged position of, even though I am quote unquote out of work, at least I am sheltered a bit from the front lines of this pandemic. And I have the privilege of being able to stay in my apartment all day if I wanted to, and not having to go out and expose myself to that. But my dad is actually back at work today, so my dad's a firefighter, and he's going to be in contact with it. There's like no question. It's pretty much a given that at some point he's going to be exposed to COVID, which he was telling me the other day. He's like, I'm just going to have to move into the basement, I guess, for the next couple of months. So I'm thinking about them a lot today. So if you see a frontline worker, make sure you express some sort of gratitude or do something to make their lives easier. Also have a little bit of gratitude because I have a new sponsor for the podcast. If you go to thefeed.com/runningthroughit, you can receive a 15% off discount for everything on the feed. So the cool thing about the feed is that it's kind of a good place to get stocked up on all your nutrition and supplement needs. So, for instance, right now they have a deal on honey stingers and Cliff bars and everything you could need for your hydration and fueling needs without having to go outside, go to a running store, go to somewhere where you can potentially run into people and all that good stuff. It takes a lot of the anxiety out of it, which was something I liked when I actually talked to Riley Masters about it. He reached out to me a couple days ago. I hopped on a phone call with him and I had some questions because I wanted to make sure that they were taking the proper precautions. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't any issues with possible contamination, that sort of thing. He assured me that they're doing everything they can to make sure that everything is sanitized and done properly before it's shipped out to everybody. So if you want some of the guesswork of going outside, and I don't know, it's kind of nice just to have everything delivered to you in this day and age, you can go to thefeed.com/runningthroughit. I will post that link down in the show notes. So if you want to check it out, you can just go into the show notes and click on that link. If you want a discount to it, all you have to have is your email. I also want to point out that if you are in the privileged situation like a lot of us are, to the point where you have the ability to donate to your local food bank, that's something that is kind of in a shortage right now with, we're just in a global time of crisis. Here in KC, we have Harvesters. That's a great organization. I've actually worked with them before in a couple of kind of the group runs that we've done where you can kind of donate instead of offering a fee. They've been awesome. In St. Louis, you can go to stlfoodbank.org. They have a lot of resources there. They actually have a landing page right now for helping during the COVID-19 crisis. You can either volunteer or donate food. If you don't know what your local food bank is, you can go to feedingamerica.org, and they have a landing page to find your local food bank. I will post that in the show notes if you need help, but just something that we can all do to kind of lend a helping hand. We're in a time where like everyone is feeling a little bit anxious about where we're going to find our next paycheck, if we're going to get laid off, if this is going to go for months and months and months. And something I think might be nice that we can do is just help out your fellow person, your fellow human that might not even have the luxury of wondering about that stuff. So something that they're having a shortage on, and something that some of us can definitely help on. So if you have the ability, that'll be posted down in the show notes below, and maybe we can do a little something to lend some help. I felt like that was something that kind of tied in with everything we were talking about. But those kind of end my shout outs, my things I needed to talk about today. Thanks again to the feed for reaching out. Thanks again to you guys for listening. And without further ado, let's get into the interview. I find a good starting point, but how are you doing? How are you feeling?
Not bad. I work from home for the most part, so that hasn't been a huge change. And then my dog probably is actually loving me being home a lot more, so that's nice. She has a little bit of separation anxiety, so dealing with that has been difficult in the past. But right now, like, my boyfriend's home most of the time, and so, you know, it's been nice from that front. But dealing with all the craziness has been difficult, especially with not being able to train us as a team. We're kind of like all doing our own thing, but yeah.
Yeah, not leaving the apartment has been difficult, and I think my cat like secretly hates it, because I've like never known what she does throughout the day, and here we are now.
Funny.
Yeah, but Andie, I wanted to talk to you because I feel like our journeys are somewhat similar, obviously on like a more elevated path for you, but like I started this podcast after college. It's a way for me to like kind of like talk through some of the stuff I was going through, and I know like you've had similar like mental health issues and things like that. How has that been going right now? Because it's, you know, stressful times. Have you been dealing with everything okay, or has the running and staying on top of everything, as well as just like the added societal issues, been hard for you, or how's it been going?
Yeah, so it's kind of been like a little bit up and down for me, but I almost feel like I entered this period a little bit probably better off than some other people did, because I actually got to race right before everything started getting canceled, and that race was already kind of something that I was like scared to do, because I was kind of still like feeling super not great in training. All these things were just not falling into place, and so I was scared to race in the first place. But I did it, and I was really happy that I ended up doing it after the fact, because it's like, looking back now, it's like I wouldn't have gotten another chance to just like assess where I was, and instead of thinking, being so in my thoughts of like, well, I don't want to race because I'm scared, so I'm gonna go, well, if I hadn't put myself out there in that situation, then I probably would have been continuing down this right here, being like, I have no idea like what's going on, like what's gonna happen. I think I would have been in a much harder mental state. But we even went into that race saying like, we're just gonna, after this race, pull things back a little bit. So that actually ended up fitting into this no racing environment that we're in now. And so I was just going to run easy for a few weeks. I think we decided on like 2 weeks of down, 4 weeks of easy, just mileage building, and then kind of start throwing in some workouts again. And so it almost fit with the current environment really well. But the only hard part now is just like, I'm doing a lot of easy stuff. And so I think I'm almost a little bit too in tune with like every moment of the day. And so it's like, you're out there running by yourself. It's supposed to be an easy run, and I don't feel great today, or why do I feel bad, and why aren't these runs getting any easier, and things like that. And whereas when I'm running with friends, occasionally you're talking the entire time, pace may be a little bit slower, you're not analyzing things quite as much. So that part I think has been a little bit difficult. There's more stuff that's like swirling around in my head, because I tend to overanalyze and think things through too much. And so part of dealing with that, though, I've been having more of my telehealth therapy sessions, and so that's been nice, so I can still kind of utilize that resource. So yeah, not been terrible, but there's definitely days that feel a little bit more kind of frustrating than others.
The isolation makes it harder to like stay out of your own head a lot, which has been something I've been working on as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like the total, because my fiance actually works at a mental health hospital, so like she's out there and like I'm in the apartment by myself all day. Like the only time I leave is for my run, so it's kind of hard to like distance myself from everything that's going on when I'm just like stuck in our apartment all day. What's been like something that you've been doing that's helped just like mentally to cope with everything? Like what's been helping you from a mentality standpoint?
So I started doing, I've always been doing Athletes for Yoga, but really, now that I have more time now anyway, so it's like, well, I had a run that was recently, I don't know, it was just only a 6-mile easy run. I just came back from it being like, why was I breathing so hard? All these things. I started thinking down all these negative paths, and so I was sitting on the couch here just wallowing in it a little bit, and I just left my coach some like all of these comments about like, basically just like it's the end of the world, so I typed that into my phone. And then I was like, let me just do like a quick like Athletes for Yoga recovery boost video, and so I did that, and it was only like a 10-minute video, and it kind of it's doing some different postures to also kind of loosen up the legs a little bit, but it's also has like a piece to it at the end where you're just kind of almost meditating in a sense and just relaxing into the pose. And so I did that, and afterwards I was like, what? I reread the comments I had just done notes, and then I went in and wrote again. I noticed things during that little tiny 10-minute span that are like, no, this is not just my body, this is like my anxiety talking, and I can tell that just by like the way I was breathing and things like that. And it's stuff that when you tune in a little bit more in depth, you can kind of find those things, and it can be a little bit more settling to think like, okay, it's not necessarily just like my body is never going to be able to do these things. It's like your anxiety does have a piece to that, and like recognizing that it does can help you get over it to an extent. And so, I've been trying to do a little bit more of the meditation through Athletes for Yoga, more of the recovery practices, and then even just doing some of that stuff as my workout, because they've got some good functional core strength stuff, since, we're at home and we can't really get to the gyms and do our typical training sessions. So,
like the checking in, I think, is important. Just like the mindfulness aspect of like focusing on like what's going on and like focusing on your body and like, okay, so this thing I'm feeling is just like my anxiety, not like overall dread.
Yeah, definitely.
What kind of led you down that path of like Athletes for Yoga and finding the like tools that have kind of helped?
So I think they came out with that Recovery for Real book, which I found was a really good resource. And I remember seeing it pop up like around Christmas time, and I was like, I need this. And I told my mom, I was like, can you get this for me for Christmas? And I reading through it, it was super informative about how the body needs to recover, not just in a sense of like sitting on the couch, but like the parasympathetic nervous system needs to recover. And so that's not just like not doing anything. That's like really, really, really like getting deep inside and being able to like relax yourself and let go of some of these external thoughts and things that are going on within your body that are keeping you from recovering all the way. So they talk about it as being recovering for real. And so I kind of like, I saw that, and I had overtrained before the 2016 Olympic trials, and then I also overtrained before I raced CIM in 2017, I think, and it didn't go well at all. And it was because I basically had overtrained going into it. There was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of emotional things that I hadn't really thought of as being stressful. I just thought like, oh, that's an emotional thing. It doesn't have anything to do with my physical stress, but they tie together. And so like I realized that within that last month of training that I was just like overworking in like several parts of my life. And so when that race didn't go well, I was coming out of that, and that's when I was like, I need to find some better recovery tools. And that was when I stumbled across that book, and I read it, and I was like, this is what I need to do. Training doesn't always have to be hard, it needs to just be beneficial. And so I found that a lot of their videos and a lot of things that they share is talking to that extent where yoga doesn't have to be this hard, long, drawn-out process. And there's so many beneficial pieces of it to runners, but sometimes you don't need like that hour-long, strenuous yoga session. Sometimes you just need something to open up your hips, and that's where it comes into play with like athletes for yoga, not just yoga for athletes or something like that. So it's like kind of trying to utilize yoga for recovery, as therapy, stuff like that. It doesn't have to be some hard workout that's beneficial. So.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think it's more of like an activity as like a conduit versus like the activity itself, which is something I enjoy. Something I try to preach is like find something that just like gets you in that flow of just being able to like focus on the activity, and then it kind of like resets things a little bit.
Oh yeah.
What kind of, because I know like, because you talked about your journey a lot, so that's why I kind of like know a little bit about what's going on, but what, is there a time in your life where like you didn't have those coping skills, where you definitely like noticed the difference between like now and your ability to like process things as they happen versus like before, and kind of like being in that cycle of like avoidance and everything that surrounds that?
So I feel like most of my time when I was in college, I was kind of so focused on just what my body looked like, and not as much about training. And the only benefit that I had during my college training cycle was that like I wasn't focusing so much on what I was doing. It was just like, this is what you're told to do, this is what you're doing. But I was focusing a lot on something that it didn't really need to be focused on, and I was still able to perform because I was just kind of focusing and listening into the training and trusting that part of it, and just listening to what my coaches said. So then when I came out of college, where you don't have your coach saying, take a break now, take 2 weeks off here, you don't have this like structured season as much anymore. That first year I struggled a lot, and I also was like, just throwing races on the calendar. For whatever reason, I don't know. They were like, oh, that sounds fun. Like, a race director would email you, and you'd be like, yeah, totally, I'll do that. And it didn't really have any, like, didn't really make sense to us why I was doing certain things. And so I made some mistakes with that. And then I just didn't run well, and I was struggling and stuff like that. And so I think, like, then when everything was still going well, though, after that year. So I qualified for the trials in 2014. Was just kind of like still just doing the same thing my coach was telling me to do. And then when training for the actual trials marathon, I was we were working between coaches because my college coach had never coached a marathon. And so I was working between like some other coaches' advice, and so no one was really like hands-on, like this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. And so I probably also started my training cycle too late. A lot of things like that where I didn't know necessarily that you could push your body too far. And so I went down that path of like I had taken like a tiny break in like mid-November, and then the trials were February 13th. And then so I started building back slowly like I had always done in college. And I don't know, sometime in like mid-November, I was like, crap, like I have 2 months into the trials and I have to hit 100 miles in order to run a marathon. Like I have to do 100-mile weeks. And so I called the coach I had been kind of bouncing ideas off with, kind of in a panic. And he was like, oh, you'll be fine just jumping the training bag up. And I think that he just didn't have the same, like, he didn't technically know where I was and why I took this break and stuff like that. And so I think he thought that I had just done like a little down period and you'll be fine bouncing back up. Well, no. So I went from like 35 miles a week to 70 and in a span of like 1 week, which is not smart. And so
it's not great.
Like after that week, I felt okay that week, but then like the weeks following that, like I had tendon problems in my foot. Like my foot was all swollen and I couldn't even like flex my toes up. And I remember like and I don't know why, but at the time I was like, oh, it's fine. Like it's not that big of a deal. Like I like I can't flex my toes unless I practice flexing them before I run. But it's fine. I can still run on it, like whatever. And looking back at that now, it's just like, why? Like why was that okay? And it's funny because I also was like trying to diagnose myself by Googling it, and it was like, everything that I found that was like an example of like, I typed in my symptoms and it was always like, this is typically caused by like increasing the volume too quickly, overtraining.
Yeah.
Like all the things that I was doing wrong, and I was like, no, that's not me. And so I think like just generally that entire experience of like doing everything wrong and then looking and then knowing what overtraining felt like at that point was like, and then I also think I did an inside tracker test that just before the trials, and it actually showed a lot of the inflammation. It showed a lot of the warning signs of I had high cortisol. I had all these problems that, you know, I should have known, but I didn't know because I didn't really think that your body could not respond. Like, I always thought you could work harder and it would just kind of like go with it. It's not the case. And so that was probably the first experience where I noticed that you can't perform that way. And now working with Inside Tracker and with Athletes for Yoga, I've kind of been able to see what happens if I push myself a little bit too hard. So I'm a little bit better at recognizing, like, I am tired today. Maybe I'll just hop on the elliptical instead of running. And that's what I ended up doing, I think, going into my first actual marathon. After I dropped out of the trials, I ran Indy Monumental in 2016, and I remember around the week of the Sir Walter Miler, which is a big race in Raleigh, North Carolina, I kind of like pushed, the week was a little bit all over the place. You know, there's all this stuff going on. You want to run with everybody. And so I think I pushed myself a little bit too hard that week. And so the next week coming out of that, I just was like, you know, I'm just going to split my miles. So I'll do 50 running miles and 30 miles on the elliptical. And so it gave me that recognition, and it worked out because that fall I ended up having a much better marathon experience, and that was still my PR. And so, I just kind of now I'm much better at being like, if you need a day off, like take the day off. Don't just do something the plan says it, or, you know, like listen to your body a little bit better. And I think I get that a little bit more. I mean, obviously I still trained going into CIM, but I think that was another experience that involved more of the emotional aspects of life and how those play into.
Yeah, and I think like we're so used to using like running and training as like our coping mechanism in general that like, okay, so we're going through something, so like now we just dive into it more. In college I actually had that because I had to take a semester off basically because I was just like having anxiety attacks and everything. But before that, like the prequel was I was just so stressed out with school that I just like ran so much and like was diving into training so much that I actually like overtrained myself at like overcompensating for like the school stressors and everything as well. So it's like we take that coping skill and we turn up to 1,000 because we don't have like anything else and we don't have those like healthy habits yet. Like looking back on it, I was like, everything I did was just so stupid, but you live and learn.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
So like for your time in college, did you ever like recognize that like any of these like unhealthy coping skills were happening, or what was kind of like the turning point in terms of like your training and like your life, I guess, in like recognizing that these things are going on?
So all through college, so I guess I'll start from my freshman year. I was struggling a lot. So I had, I didn't know I had celiac disease at the time. But so back to where I was. So freshman year, I was having a lot of difficulty, didn't run very well. I was really struggling, and I didn't know I had celiac disease at the time. And so having all these undiagnosed symptoms, and, you know, we didn't know what exactly was going on. And so I gained a bunch of weight within that process, and so I was kind of like trying to like control what I was eating and restricting and trying to figure out why I was not feeling very good. And, you know, come to find out a lot of it was just that, you know, inflammation from this like undiagnosed problem that I was having. And so then once we figured that out, you know, things changed, and I was still feeling a lot better, and, you know, I dropped all that inflammation off, and so I lost a bunch of weight. And then it kind of got stuck in my head that that's what I needed to keep doing. And so I kind of kept eating the same way. I just kept counting what I was eating and really restricting a lot. And so I had this fear of feeling the same way that I did before. And so that part of that became like what was driving the under eating. And so it just continued. And I didn't have a period for my entire time when I was in college. And a lot of the doctors were like, well, we can put you on birth control, but I was like, no, I don't want to be on birth control for whatever reasons. I was just kind of like in my head about that. And so I was reluctant to change a lot of that stuff. And but the thing was that I was like, well, I'm still training, like everything's fine. I'm running fine. I'm not injured. I keep getting better. Like why should I be concerned about not having this period if there's no consequence right now?
Yeah.
And so I just kind of, just continued down that path. And then I got to my post-collegiate career, and, I started going to a nutritionist, and she was like, you're not eating enough. And I was like, I mean, I'm a normal weight for my height. Like, what do you mean I'm not eating enough? And so she kind of started working with me a little bit more on the recovery piece. And so that was helpful. And I had a really, really great season coming out of that. But, I still was in this bubble of still not eating enough and still not stimulating the hormones to be, released. And so I think it was around after my first marathon, I finished it, and I was like, you know what? I really want to get to the bottom of this issue that had been kind of almost just dismissed by people that I had seen in the past. So I'd gone to 3 doctors when I first graduated, and all of them were either an assumption, like you're not eating enough, without really talking to me in depth about what I was eating.
Yeah.
And so that just came across me as like this, you're just judging me based on whatever. I'm a runner. I don't have my period. Their gut reaction is you're not eating enough. And from my perspective, that was like, well, we haven't talked about how much I've been eating, so you're just generalizing, which is frustrating. And then I had some doctors that just said it helps runners. And so there was a lot of like misinformation that was leading me to think that it was okay for even longer than it should have been.
Yeah.
And so, but in 2016, I think I was listening to a podcast by Connie Freyzak, and she was talking about a little bit more of the risk factors long term with having secondary amenorrhea, and just about how like you may be doing fine right now, but there's going to be an end point where your body can't hold on to that any longer, and it's just eventually just going to kind of like break down, and you're just not going to be able to compete. And it may be, and then I noticed, like, I was like, I don't really want that to be my I end my career. Like, I want to be able to choose when my career is over, not have my body tell me like you're done because I did this thing to my body for X number of years. And so that was when I was like, okay, I already just did my first marathon. I have some time now. I have to recover from this. Why don't I try to tackle this whole health issue that I've been having? And it did come down to the fact that I wasn't eating enough, and so I wasn't stimulating like the hormones to actually be released. And so my body was kind of also doing something called what happens when you're not eating enough is that your body holds on to more fat, and so just because it thinks you're constantly in this starvation mode.
Yeah.
And so from all appearances, I looked like a healthy athlete, but internally things were just not working super well. And so that it causes your metabolism to slow down, and like all these other things that I kind of didn't quite understand. And if I had been maybe told that sooner, maybe I would have changed things a little bit quicker. But I think that the big turning point for me was actually hearing that there's an end to this. It's not normal. You need to fix this, because if you can fix this now, you've got a long-term career that you see out. Like there's a lot of men and women that are running super fast in their 30s, and I think that's more important to think about than it is to run fast right now. So
the longevity, especially in this sport, is like the number one thing, I think, for just, you see so many people run well into their 30s and 40s, even at like now, that you have another like 20 years of high caliber running.
Yep.
Do you think a lot of that, was it just not having the right information, or was part of it just using like training as like a coping mechanism? What do you think was kind of the main driver behind that?
Yeah, I think, I think it was a coping mechanism so I was really focused on my weight, constantly. Then when I was running well, I was like, that was still driving my thoughts about everything. And so I don't know what it was, because I remember I look back at pictures of me from when I was in college, and I'm like, you look totally fine, but for some reason when I looked in the mirror, it was like you need to be thinner. You're not as thin as these other girls. And so I think it was more of like a comparison thing for me. Is like I need to look like these other runners because I don't. And I don't even know why I was doing it because I was running fine. I mean, I was All-American twice in the 10K, and that was still the overwhelming desire was to be thinner. And I would go to people and be like, I don't know why I can't lose weight. And it was like, well, why do you need to lose weight? And at the time, I think it was more like a body dysmorphia type of thing that was going on. Like feeling like I wasn't doing enough if I didn't look as thin and as toned as these other girls. But I think I've realized now that you don't have to look like something to be fast and strong and good and all these other things. But I don't know. I think now I still have a little bit of trouble accepting it fully, just because I am right now going through that process of trying to find the right medium. And so I've been healthy now for at least 9 months, but I I still haven't been able to get the training to come back to where I want it to be and really start racing as well as I would like to. So I still sort of start to think like this weight is just the biggest problem. There's no way I can be fast like this, and it's hard to break the cycle when you can't really break through on the performance again and comparing myself to my previous self. And I don't know. If running was, I don't know. It's interesting to think about like whether or not it was a coping mechanism. But yeah.
Because it's a work in progress, right? It's like you're always gonna have to be working on it for the rest of your life, probably. At least that's like in my case. Like I'm still working on like things that make me like overly anxious. And like thinking back on my college career, it's like my fitness now, even though I train a lot, isn't anywhere near that. But I'm a lot happier now than I was then. Right. So it's like, what's the trade-off? Would I rather be fast, or would I rather be actually like enjoying living? Right. Yeah. So that's where I'm at in it. And it's like I'm still working on things every day and like building that like skill, that like coping skill. But
right. Yeah. I've been like super up and down with it, and like last week I was just like frustrated generally, and I was just like, I'm never gonna stop this like weight gaining problem. I mean, all these things are just gonna continue to get worse. I'm never gonna see progression in my training. And then my therapist was just like, well, we need to find other things that are good about your body, what it's good for, what things it can do beyond just running. Because right now the thing that's like driving my thoughts about my body is running, and if running's not going well, it just creates this cycle and this like downward spiral of thoughts. And so we're trying to break that. And some days I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm like strong and I can do all these cool things, and I'm not care what it looks like. And then other days I'm like, no.
Yeah, there's always those ups and downs, and
yeah.
I would assume like having the team probably helps a lot with that too, because I know you guys are all kind of like similar in terms of like age and like ability levels. And how has like Rally Distance Project been helping you overall?
I think it's been great. I think so Sammy, who is one of the girls on the team who had basically a breakout year this year, she has been a good example of kind of what really taking care of your body and being really focused on doing those little things right and being smart about listening to your body. She's been a really good example of that. And she kind of had she came out of college and she had taken a year off, and so her last season in NC State was kind of like a rebuilding year, and so it wasn't like the best thing that she'd ever done. But so she didn't really have a lot of opportunity coming out of college, which was similar to me and similar to a lot of the girls on the team. And so we all knew that there was a lot of potential there, and I think she knew it too. And so she was like, I want to keep training. I want to do it in a good atmosphere where I don't feel this pressure to get really thin or do these things that are unhealthy for my body. And so she then took her a couple years, but like seeing her go from running 4:31 in the 1500 to seeing her run 4:34 in a mile, a couple of years later. It's been a good example and really inspiring to me. And so it's been really fun to see that. And then generally just cheering on my teammates. So I've been doing a lot more of that, I feel like, lately. I went to Houston, was going to race, but I had decided not to because I was just like, your body needs to rest, just pull back.
Yeah.
And I got to see a teammate qualify for one trial, which was the most fun thing. The other one of my teammates there, Rita, they had a big PR as well. And so just being able to have people just doing great things around me and knowing that it's possible if I just kind of like give myself the opportunity and stay present has been really, really great. I think I had realized how much team was important to me when I first joined Wazelle in the first place. That first year that I mentioned that was not great post-collegiately felt very alone.
Yeah.
So when I joined the relay, that was kind of my first opportunity to kind of see what it was like. And when I first joined the relay, I didn't have people to train with, but I had people to talk to and people to support me. And so that was really, really great to have that core group. And so now that we've got kind of like people, now I've got some of the girls here that are training with me and supporting me too. It's been really nice to feel together.
Yeah.
All the ups and downs.
Erin was here last fall for like a conference, and I was able to kind of meet with her and talk about the team and everything. Yeah, that was like one of the things she mentioned because she was injured at the time when we talked, and like she was talking about just like the team atmosphere just kind of like kept her like engaged, which I think is like so important, especially when you're like kind of not sure where you are as a runner or as an athlete.
Yeah, and we have such a big running community here too. I'm pretty sure she mentioned that. But you just learn from other people's experiences, no matter what, where they are as a runner. Like they could be, a 5-hour marathoner, but there's still something that you can learn from. It could be, like a 2:30 woman and still be able to help you, even if that's not where you are. And I feel like that's so important to be able to have those people around you to talk to. And it's been a really good resource.
Have you guys kind of like been able to reassess your 2020, 2021 goals yet, or is it still kind of up in the air as far like from a team standpoint of what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it's a little, but I do think that pushing back the electoral Olympics may be beneficial to pretty much a lot of us because those of us that were trying to do on the track trials will be able to have a little bit more time to kind of gain some fitness and then see if we can get in there. Because I would love to be able to, that's actually when I decided not to run Houston, I was just like, I don't want to run marathons right now. I'm so over this. I want to get back on the track. I want to do some speed work. That sounds more fun to me. So that, the beginning of the season for me was just like, felt like I was running into a brick wall. And so I was like, I need to pull things back right now. And so now this puts me in a position where I can be like, all right, I can really, really, really take this period to like get my body back to where I want it. Really focus on recovery and building back up and doing all the things I need to do, and not be kind of pushing for some arbitrary go. It gives me a little bit more, a window for gaining that fitness. And so I think that's probably the case for a lot of the girls. They're still training through right now, doing workouts kind of solo, but I think that's going to be beneficial to us in the long run. Just like, working out with a team is great because it has someone to push you, but when you're in a race and you're by yourself, that's a whole new territory to push through. And so I think it's a good experience for all of us to kind of have that element thrown in. But we're looking at some races during the summer, so hopefully by June, July, and August we'll be able to kind of think about those kind of races. And Sir Walter Myler, hopefully we'll still be able to take the Liven out there, and they also have their pop-up miles that they do every Tuesday in June, which is really fun. So we're hoping to kind of be able to maybe be able to do those things.
Yeah, hopefully everything's kind of slightly back to normal by that point. I think you grow a lot through like this kind of adversity though, so it's a learning experience, and like everyone's kind of going through it, so it's like that like out of my hands kind of feeling is nice too, to a certain point. Kind of comforts me.
I coach several athletes, and we've been going through that thought process of figuring out, like, okay, what do we do now, and how do we reassess our goals? And I tried to be talking to them about kind of how, like, we didn't get the race in, but you still have done all these things to make yourself super fit, super strong, so that if you were to race, you'd be ready to go. The benefit is that we're not really creating any muscle breakdown by racing, so essentially just have this great, awesome cycle, and then you can take a little break and then get right back into it, and you can use all of that to your advantage. And so we've just been kind of figuring out, like, well, maybe we just kind of shift back to some speed work over the summer, and then find something in the fall that sounds fun, and then hopefully that all of those things will be able to happen, and then go from there. And I've tried to also be feeling like, this is a time period too, like we talked about, listening to your body a little bit more. And so if you are feeling super stressed in this time frame, like, really do what you need to do for you, because there's no pressure, we're not really on some sort of strict schedule anyway, so, like, just do the things that you need to do for you, and, like, we got to have grace with each other and grace with ourselves. So I think that this is the perfect time for that. So.
Yeah, I like that. My college coach used to describe it as like an emotional container. It's like everything that stresses you, whether it's from training or from life or from work or school, like, it all takes out of that, and it's all just one giant piece of the pie. So if you're stressed out by your current situation, you need to, like, not train as hard, because you're just gonna tear yourself down a lot quicker. But so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Well, Andie, I don't want to take up much more of your time. If you could tell everyone where to find you, things that you're working on currently.
Yeah. Okay. So my Instagram is @run4, like the number 4, and then ACOZZ, so run for ACOZ. And that's my Instagram, Twitter, and also my website. And so you can find me on www.runforacause.com. And I have some of my coaching information there if anyone is interested and needs some coaching. Additionally, I'm part of the Raleigh Distance Project. So we're a team of 6 women based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And so you can find us at raleighdistanceproject.org. We also are at Raleigh Distance Project on Instagram and Twitter. It's Raleigh Distance, because we couldn't do the full name. But yeah, so I'm just kind of doing everything. I'm sponsored by Wazel, and I'm also sponsored by Generation UCAN, which is one of my long-time favorites. I've been sponsored by them since it started, pretty much, before it feels like it. I guess both them and Wazel have been my long-time favorites in that. Yeah, and they're coming out with all kinds of really fun new products lately, and so it's been really exciting to see. I know I talked to my rep earlier this week, and it's trying times a little bit with all these kind of retail businesses right now, and so I'm just trying to do my part and help them out, and they're great for performance nutrition and hydration and all the good stuff. So beyond that, Athletes for Yoga. And Alt-Red, I'm an ambassador for them as well. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Andie. I appreciate you hopping on, taking time out of all of our busy days right now.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yep, no problem. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks again to Andie for hopping on with me. That was a good combo. Like I said, I wanted to talk to Andie because I feel like we had some common ground of things we've been through as far as our mental health struggles. Obviously, every mental health journey is different and it's not all the same, but I think you can learn a lot from other people's struggles and take it away and hopefully find some things that you can institute in your own life that might be able to help you build strong coping mechanisms, strong abilities to just deal with strife and things that kind of leave you unsettled. Hopefully I cleaned that up. We were having a couple of Skype issues during the interview, so I apologize if the audio isn't great. Unfortunately, right now, there's not a lot I can do about that, so I think everyone's having audio issues across the board. So, I appreciate you guys for listening. If you want to listen to another Raleigh Distance Project interview, I interviewed Aaron Clark last fall. You can find that by scrolling down in the feed. I'll also post that in the show notes along with everything else. Again, Andie talked about Generation UCAN. You can find UCAN on the feed, which is sponsoring me currently. If you go to Running Through It, if you go to thefeed.com/running through it, also down in the show notes, you can get a 15% off discount on everything you can in other hydration and nutrition related products. So thanks again to the Feed for helping me out with that. In the meantime, hope you guys can take something away from this interview. Hope you guys are hanging in there. This is week 2.5 of staying inside. Week 2, I guess, of the stay at home, but week 2.5, week 3 of just global uncertainty, and it's kind of tough on everyone. So I'm thinking about all of you, thinking about everyone who is on the front lines, and ultimately, if you can get outside, just even if it's for 20 to 30 minutes, I think that just helps you kind of recenter and find something to take your mind off everything that's going on in the world right now. So with that in mind, remember to work hard, be nice. Happy running, everybody. We will talk